Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Talking Mode. My name is Sarah, and this is
Caroline, hello everyone. Nice to meet you again. So in today's episode, in light of the recent event that's been happening and has been widely apparent on the internet and also social media, which is the suicide case of a 16-year-old boy who was in 11th grade and he was studying at Amsterdam Specialized High School. He committed suicide by jumping off from his balcony, which is on the 28th floor. And so this event has sparked quite a lot of controversy and kind of a lot of discussions and conversations regarding topics like parenting or pressure, academic success, parental pressure, and every single aspect of education almost. And so we thought that we would discuss and share our own perspectives and our own insight onto discussion because we are also students. And this is probably our last year of being a high school student, and we will share talking from experience and share with you some of our insights. Before we get into the video, please keep in mind that again, this is our own personal experience, personal opinion, so please, as always, take it as a grain of salt and do your research. And we just hope with an intention to kind of broaden your horizon and just provide you with more perspectives when it comes to viewing this particular incident. We just hope that you would learn something from this and you would maybe alter your perspective a little bit after hearing our we share about our experience.
okay. So, without further ado, let's get started. Caroline, answer me this. How are you? Like, and not in a way that you would, reply to a IELTS examiner or an acquaintance of some sort. How are you?
So I'm actually been doing very well, like mentally and physically. And I know that we have just gotten out of a hectic weeks of exam, but like because we just got out of a week of exam, that's my fuse to kind of recover and just kind of take care of myself a little bit more, because we all know that during exam weeks we don't really have much time to ourselves other than revising and going over through our notes. And so I think that this week in particular, I have been, just taking life and just taking my studies even a little bit more slower than usually, because I don't know about you, but like after week of exam, even if it's midterm or finals, I like always feel very tired, exhausted, and drained because I spent all my energy kind of revising for all the tests. And so yeah, in this week I just don't feel like doing anything, which is sometimes a nice thing. It's our body saying that we need rest. And so yeah, I've been doing okay. But that doesn't mean that I don't have ups and downs. I don't have moments where I feel mentally exhausted, because I do. So I think it's been a decent ride. How about you? How's your life been? How have you been feeling recently?
Okay, so apparently I'm gonna, have a very elaborate answer with lots of bullet points for this, well, simple question. How am I, right? So, academically wise speaking, I guess that just like you, gotten out of a week of midterms, and I also participated in the probably the last Olympiad in high school that finished yesterday. Honestly, this week has been a little bit. It's been more than like beyond hectic because it's been a really long time since I really have to cram for a test that I basically pour all my efforts into revising that because I had really short time to really brush up on my knowledge on history, which is the subject that I took. And so I only slept for like 4 to 5 hours a day, and I woke up probably at 3. And so I don't know, for a really long time I felt like my body is actually drained and it's I'm super exhausted, and that it's it's basically telling me to take rest. But then I feel like, even if there's like a moment that I lie down, then I probably waste a lot of time, just instead I can use that to study. So probably right now I am recording this with my very strange, odd kind of voice because I'm currently having a sore throat. Um, and coughing a lot, but I don't think that I'm positive for COVID, hopefully. Um, well, mentally speaking, um, academic studies has, well, put a drain into my mental health these days. It's been really pressured, and with not from family but mostly from coming from myself, and the like how the teachers would react, and how teachers have pour all that effort into, well, teaching me. And so I thought that basically cramming for his test and receiving some kind of awards would be like a way of paying back. And another thing is that I think I briefly told Caroline about this. I briefly told you is that a close friend of mine, a really good friend of mine, um, well, I almost lost dumb. Basically, just gonna refer to it as dumb. Well, it was, gotta say, it was a little bit odd, and then not odd is not a good word to phrase it, like, because I've never been into that situation where I just okay. So this is an story from last week. Uh, Basically we just hang out, and then after that they for some reasons, for some mental issues, they attempted to commit suicide. um, and they was about to jump off a bridge because of unresolved mental issues regarding academic pressure, and then family issues. I was before that they attempted to do so, they give me a call as a um, a goodbye, basically. Said how sorry and how apologetic they were, and how they appreciated me as a friend. It's a really strange position that I've been placed in for so long, because I've never had someone close to me that even had the thought of committing suicide. Um, and before that, everything was normal, actually. Everything, like, like we just talked and we joked, we laughed, but then there was nothing to be really suspicious about the behavior. But then things like that. But I'm glad in the end that they did not decided to do it. um, well, the family found them, and then they resolved their issues, and so now that it's they put behind all that. So I guess it's been, well, like a line graph. My emotions have been like fluctuated with ups and downs, and sometimes in the middle. So yes, I guess that's a really elaborate answer for just how are you. So yes, Caroline and Sarah both experience ups and downs, even just at the age of 17. Upon the suicide case of the 11th grader in Hanoi, how had people, how had netizens, how had they reacted to that case?
So like as always with many other kind of cases like this, or any other, like, I don't know, online event, online incident, like we mentioned about in the last episode about how people had mixed feelings. So like this case wasn't any exception. So personally, I see that there are two schools of thought. So the first one is belongs to people who think that it's like his family's fault, like for not like being able to resolve his conflicts, being able to resolve like his emotions, because it wasn't 1 day or 2 days that he has kept his feelings, or he has like buried his feeling. And so it's been a long time, and people say that it's his family's fault for not being able to, communicate with him and let him, build up that much of emotions that lead to that much of, I don't know, dissatisfaction, hopelessness, because like jumping off from a balcony on a 28th floor was no joke. Like you need to have, I cannot even imagine how discouraged, how, I don't know, hopeless he was in that moment that he decided to jump off from that much of a height, And so people think that, yeah, it was his family. And, in the last clip, in the clip that we, that was going viral on not on social media and stuff, like, people still see like his father, I don't know, like what his father said, but like judging from his father's like tones and emotions, he seemed very upset. And some people believe that it was his father telling him to keep studying even though it was 3 a.m. in the morning. But again, there's another school of thought where people say that it's partially the boy's fault for, I don't know, not be able to speak up or not finding a way to kind of approach his parents with about these issues. And yeah, so there are mixed feelings about this, and I personally think that of course it's a mix of both. Both parties have made a mistake when it comes to this particular incident, but I personally think that the family holds more mistake, like they hold more responsibility when it comes to this particular issues, which we will be talking about later. But yeah, that's my personal take. What do you think?
Well, I think that when it comes to something, like this, what's done, it's done, right? Basically, when we trying to pinpoint on who's right, who's wrong now, it does not really matter anymore. But surely we need to have an open discussion about this to see, like to give it basically a reflection on how has parenting and, how communication plays a role in, in the upbringing of the child. So my take on this is that I don't know for sure what really happened, honestly, because just like you, I watch the same thing. I watch the same clip, read the same notes from off the social media, and I just think that surely it takes a lot of angst. I mean, like the level of angst that builds up inside him must be, like you said, must be so much that it just without any hesitation just jumped off and then ended his life. And I think that in terms of whose fault it is, I really don't know, because maybe that is maybe it's the pressure that the boy had put it for himself, or maybe it is the pressure that he thought his family put on himself, that has led to this incident. But whatever it is, I think that the I mean, like basically just like you said, on social media they basically, it became a battle. It became like that thing has become like a crime scene for now, that the netizens basically pointing to the parents or like the kids, whether whose fault it is. And I think that that does not make this thing go away. If anything, it just makes how we approach to this kind of like mental health issues and or like communication issues in a wrong way, because we just brought it up as in like trying to see whose fault it is instead of just finding the solution. And when it comes to solution, of course there's no size fits all for for things like this.
I agree, like when you brought up that idea about, it's nonsense that we are just trying to point fingers to where like who's wrong and who's right in this situation. Like it's not doing us any justice. And I think that this incident happened for a reason, like as sad as it sounds, but like I do believe that everything happens for a reason, especially with this such a serious case. And with it being brought to the surface, with it being brought to our awareness, I think we should use it for a good cause. And I think that we should really talk about the problem of parenting and the parenting the different parenting styles. And as you said, like how important it is for communication between both parties in this situation, and not like we shouldn't be talking about who's right, who's wrong, because yeah, we cannot like undone the consequences or the hurt or the grief that many of his family suffer, or even like from like we suffer as well. Like watching that video was a very hard experience. Like many people cannot even watch through the whole video, and so it's very relatable. And I think that we should use this as a time to talk about more important things, like as you said, real resolution, so that we can maybe lessen the suicide cases of among like students or among like academics in general, but and not just like try to debate who's right, who's wrong, because I think that both parties have done wrong, and no one is right in this situation. Yeah.
So a lot has been said about this incident, and the most prominent viral one is from Tati Maihu, a teacher, who has wrote on her Facebook page saying about how pressure creates diamond, how pressure really makes diamonds. So on this viewpoints, do you think that it's appropriate? Do you think that it's suits to that it applies to this how we resolve family tension, or like how parents teach their children?
I think that this saying is right. It's an old saying, but it's a very famous one. And so because of that, I think that it has, there are some reasons that why people believe in this belief so much, because pressure is inevitable in our lives. Pressure is everywhere. Even from the littlest thing, like I don't know, going to the grocery store, we have pressure about overspending, or pressure about, I don't know, crossing over a street and being hit by a bus or something. So no, there's pressure everywhere. And so I think that, yeah, it is right to an extent, but what we're talking about is an upbringing of a generation in, first of all, but also an individual at the end of the day. And I think that every single person is different when it comes to their background, when it comes to their ethnicity, religious beliefs, even like personalities and also potentials, because what we're talking about is academics. And so I think that even though to an extent pressure is necessary in a school setting, I think that it is good when it's in moderation. And I think that when it's become toxic, it's when pressure becomes too much to handle, because at the end of the day, we're still like under the age of 18. We're not like mature when it comes to our physical body, and also our mental health.
I totally agree with you on the part that, not everyone, well, not all pressure is going to create diamonds, because we need other conditions too, right? Under different influence, under different conditions creates different. And plus, well, what if I don't want to be a diamond? What if I want to be a sapphire? What if I want to be a pearl? What if, yeah, I mean, figuratively speaking, well, that's just diamonds and sapphires, and they are just something. It's a cover terms for greatness, for success, right? All of us want to be successful, and surely discipline, pressure from family, from friends, from ourselves, it, it, are something that drives us to reach those things. But it has to be approached with a right way, because imagine if you are drowning in all that, in all the pool of academic success. How are you going to pick up yourself from that? You need to be taught how to be, like you said, how to deal with it, how to resolve it, how to talk about it. Because one thing that I know is that sometimes we just denied it. sometimes we don't even know that we've been, pressure. It becomes like a norm, basically. But then something happened and it triggers that part inside of you, and suddenly you're having a meltdown, and God knows how, what are you going to do with that? Because suddenly it's something that's called suddenly, and you just panicked, and then you ran away, or then you committed suicide. Because sometimes it's just in that moment of weakness that you kind of give in, because suddenly you are find yourself backed against, like, back in the corner, not knowing what to do, not knowing who to turn to. And so dealing with pressure, dealing with stress, it's no easy way. I mean, even for adults, it has been like, I mean, adults, they aren't even perfect about it, and they don't even know, some of them don't even know how to do it, how to express their feelings. So let alone children under 18. What are they going to do about it? They watch enough films, they read enough books to know about it, but when it comes to themselves, they're just as clueless as as it is. So, Caroline, personally, what do how do you deal with, like, stress and pressure? If, say, you were put into, say, you were brought up from a family who just pressure you in all forms, physically, mentally. You have to be this, you have to be that, you have to graduate by the time you are 18, for example, um, and then get a job, get a life, have a husband, and bear, 3 kids when you by the age of 25. So let's just say, hypothetically speaking, that is your living conditions. How are you just gonna handle it?
Okay, but first, like, I want to add a little bit more to the point that you talked about how, pressures has become the norm in today's society. And I think that's a very dangerous thing now that mental health suddenly becomes the norm. And now that people, I don't know, they just glamorize it to an extent. And, even though, like, we have read about mental health, we have read about anxiety, pressure, I don't know, mental disorders, but I think that the mental disorders that have been projected and have been, apparent on social media, on news, on television, on films, on newspaper, in books, they are very glamorized, and they are very, I don't know, they are not real to an extent, now that people, I don't know, people just take that as a trend, like we mentioned earlier in this big
Yeah.
episode. Yeah.
Do you think that sometimes they're a little bit overly dramatic to some
Yeah.
kind of?
And so, yeah, that's reflected in the Facebook post that we mentioned, how, the teacher, she mentioned how, all of this is just a useless, and it's not, and it's a very, I don't know, not worth talking about incident, because it's everywhere, everyone claims about it, everyone talks about how stressed they are, everyone talks about how panicked, how pressured they are, and suddenly it becomes a norm. And our teachers and our parents and now even ourselves think that it is okay to bear that much amount of pressure. It is okay to, have a couple of suicidal thoughts once in a while, and that's not okay. And we haven't talked about the real mental health, and the raw and the reality of mental health, what it looks like. And I think that even if, we've seen it, we don't see the full picture. And even if we see the full picture, that's very objective to that person's situation. It's not our situation. And so I think that I just want to add that, because the mental health topic is a very in the gray, in between, not very like concrete subject. And I think that we shouldn't listen to anybody's advice. We should base it on our own situation, of course, but of course, like, do your research,
You
because
can seek help, right? But then
yeah,
just think about it.
you can obviously seek advice, but do not take it as the only way out, because there have been many ways. People have been dealing with anxiety, mental health all over these years. But back to the question that you asked me about how I handle anxiety. So me too, I haven't been taught, or I haven't talked to anybody about anxiety growing up, like obviously before high school. Nobody talked to me about pressure. I just accepted that as a part of my life. And so growing up, I just didn't realize there's anything wrong with it. But then when high school hit, then the pressure becomes almost unbearable. Now I started to, realize that there must be something wrong, because I believe that we shouldn't bear that much amount of pressure, especially when we are children. And the more that I researched, the more that I read about the importance of sleep and diet and the fitness culture and how to lead a healthy lifestyle, the more I realize how toxic the society that we live in, the society that normalizes pressure, especially like extreme pressure, like the pressure in the case that we talked about with the boy in the beginning. And so personally, I just do not deal with it at all. I just now learn to distinguish between the pressure that is bearable and the pressure that is just too much. And I think that you know the only pressure that I accept and I care about is the pressure that I put on myself, because the pressure that the people around me put on myself doesn't matter to me, because that is their personal opinions and that doesn't have to do anything with my life. And so I just learn how to identify between those two kinds, and I just sort out my own pressure. People, we are very hard on ourselves. Like you mentioned how even though your body like needs the rest, you just cannot rest. And like me too, I've been there. And that's how the belief about productivity hustle culture has put on
Toxic.
ourselves, yeah, toxic culture. And so I think that I just choose to not deal with it at all, and I just have to deal with the pressure that I put on myself, because that matters. And I just of course take a rest. That's, I think it's the only issue, and that's only solution. So yeah, that's my question.
Yeah,
Answer.
I think that I have like this kind of similar way of coping, like mechanism of coping with stress and peer pressures or any kind of pressures, because surely they are inevitable. Like even though like how well prepared you are to just fight this off, to not care about what other people do, when you're in the classrooms, especially when you're in your senior year and it's like university seeking like applications and stuff like that, you are just doomed to care about it, no matter how you know how much you don't want to ask them. Just like, oh, so what school are you attending next year? It's basically the ultimate question that you just have in your mind. Maybe you're just curious, and and you, like, for example, if they just arrive earlier, it's like, oh my god, what happens, like, people is just getting into places and I'm not. And so it's inevitable. And so like I've known that um the way that I deal with it is that I looked at a longer course of action. For example, because I know that even though it's university, even though that it's important next 4 years of my life, 4 or 5 years of my life, but it's not something that if I basically set myself on a path of self-doubting and basically having meltdown, i'm I'm just not gonna get anywhere. um I'm not gonna get anywhere. And if I should basically, if I'm having meltdown, not only that my families are disappointed, but they're not. I mean, they're being supported all the way. But like, the most important thing is that I am gonna be disappointed in myself. So I just think that in dealing with things like this, it's good that you talk to someone. It's good that you could, because along the way I've got a chance to talk it out well with someone. And I just to feel like, just to kind of receive others people perspective on the same thing and how they have done with that. It kind of gives you like a different perspective actually. And you kind of, when you talk it out, when you know how to phrase it, when you put it down into words, it's everything actually became clearer. Or before, you just have all these thoughts rambling in your mind, um, rent free in your mind, and it's killing you. And the second thing is that I know what is my priority. um, the thing is the thing is you can choose to end your life. You can, you know, that's your easy way out. That's it. When you end it, that's it. Basically, that's it. There's nothing more to it. So if you're thinking about all this pressure, because surely all this pressure is because you want to be something. You want to be someone in the future. You want to, you know, you want all this greatness in your life. But basically that's just a setback. So you need to really know how to um, relieve all that and decide what is your priority. And the best way to know that is setting your priority. Know that, no matter what, you just have to get there. But in order to get there, you have to let go of some of your hurdles and some of the things that's stopping you. And the thing that's stopping you right now is the fact that you just pressure yourself, or the fact that your family pressure you, so you talk about it. You find someone, you seek help. And not, choosing to end your life. It's, there's no way of recovering from that. Um, maybe from the first floor. But
Yeah. I agree, but like I want to add something to that, because when it comes to mental health, I think our mindset is very important. And so because of that, I think the information that we take in every single day, it's also very important. And so I think that the number one reason why people suffer from pressure, like extreme pressure, and how they cannot deal with it, is because they compare themselves to everyone around them and people on social media. And so I think personally, I do not follow any accounts that make me question myself and make me question my path. I follow, motivational quotes, and I follow, like, of course, like word affairs, and other stuff, but I do not follow toxic accounts, who are promoting body dysmorphia, or like anything that makes me question my self-worth and question my path. And obviously, with the topic that you brought up about how many decisions are coming, and even with me, when my decision came very early, and now that many of our classmates receive their decision, I sometimes question, like, if I have done enough, and if I could have done better, because obviously now that I've seen more and more people getting accepted to their dream school, I was somehow disappointed that I couldn't get into my dream school. Obviously, like, I don't know, we shouldn't have that kind of dream school or something, but like, it's good to have a goal. But now that many people have achieved their goals, I was just like questioning my self-worth. And so that's why I was very hesitant when people ask me, what schools are you attending or something. And even with you, I'm very happy to share, but like with some people who I'm not very close with, it feels like a little bit uncomfortable, and I just do not want
sometimes
to
feel
share.
like you're being attacked, right?
Yeah, and
Like,
I because I talked to you earlier about how I didn't want many people know about my journey, because that would make me question my journey more. Because many people, and I would be afraid of how I would think, like, oh, what would they think about me, what would they think about my school or something, so I just avoid that totally. And even though it's been difficult, I've been trying to do that, and also on social media follow accounts that are obviously uplifting, motivational, but also informative and insightful, because at the end of the day, we're here to learn. And I think that mental health is a very, very serious topic that we need to be aware of. Especially I know this is a very weird thing, but like I saw a TikTok about how another kind of mental disorder has been added to the book, the book where doctors or therapists, they look at the book to identify what mental disorder you suffer from. And that the newest addition to that is the extreme grief. disorder, from when a loved one of yours pass away and people just suffer too much from grief. I don't know. That's just a side note. But like, I'm very curious about information like that, and I think that it's cool to see where this industry is heading, and how, because within the mental health industry there obviously are people who have bad intentions, who would like to add disorders to the book that are not very beneficial to ourselves. And so I think that we should be aware of that, because nobody will teach us about this except ourselves. So that's one thing I want to add to that.
Yeah, I'm just gonna spend the next few seconds to shout out to Caroline for her amazing source of opportunity. I mean, you're so positive, like and
Thank you.
I
That's
mean, I'm constantly amazed. Yeah, I'm constantly amazed at how positive and you are about everything.
right.
That's actually one thing that I really love about you. Um, my
But
rate of
one thing,
sunshine.
I'm trying to be more negative sometimes, to be more vulnerable, because the thing with being positive all the time is that I forget how to be negative, and I forget how to be vulnerable. Yeah, so that's one more thing.
Yeah, well, like we said, moderation is
Yeah, in
everything, right?
moderation.
Well, it's not just applies to diet, but it's everything. I
Yeah,
mean,
everything.
well, being positive, overly positive, it's not good. Of course, you need to touch down and get a real sense of reality, like the harsh reality. But I guess in the meantime, a bit of positivity wouldn't hurt. And I remember the part when you talked about talking to someone. Well, I know that it's advisable to talk to someone about something, but it's also important to know the right person to talk to, um, because you can just randomly talk to someone, but I'm sure that is not gonna help because, well, there are sometimes it's the person who you talk to really change the course of action. Well, when talking to someone who has like no basically who doesn't care about you or like who just there happens to be there, um it's not gonna help. You just have to find that, maybe looking for a specialist, or like if you have a close friend, someone who understands you, and that would help. Or try to, so Caroline, there's this question that I think a lot of people question. It's that sometimes, well, we say that it's we try to talk to someone, but if we're living in a household where families, not everyone is around it, not everyone is brought up with parents who are kind of trying to understand their children. Sometimes it's just the relationship between daughter, son, and parents is just messy. They cannot even talk about things like that. So how it's, you know so from your like perspective, what do you think, like this, how this could be solved?
So my family does not really talk about this topic really much, because with my parents going like working from like early in the morning to very late in the evening, we don't really have much an opportunity to talk about this. But so I think this would not be an answer, but like I myself just seek the information out myself, and I obviously look for other people who I can talk to, my friends, or even talk to myself, like journal or diary. I think that would be a very also an alternative that we can really do. And I just, yeah, talk, like not talk, but like seek the information out. And I think that when you have gotten a little bit more educated about this topic, you will, you will have the courage to talk about this topic. And when I learn more about this topic, mental health, and how kind of toxic and in the gray it is, I can like talk to my brother and kind of bring up this topic, because living in a household where topics like these are not brought up regularly, I think it's my responsibility, especially when I have the knowledge about this topic, to talk and to bring awareness to the topic, because I do not want my brother to be uneducated, to be kept out of this topic, because I believe that he goes through pressure as well. And I don't know if you like believe in this, but I personally think that the later generation will be suffering from more and more extreme pressure than our generations, because with the current education system, how it's all constantly changing every single year, how the format's constantly being changed with no intention of being permanent anytime soon. I think it's a lot of pressure for them to be constantly keep updated, change their study methods, like with our generation in general, like from writing, taking an exam and writing and kind of displaying the way that we solve the math, to now just being multiple choice. It's a very sudden change, and I myself found it hard in the beginning also, and let alone and like future generation whose like whole education system was changed, their, I don't know, their textbooks, the way, I don't know, yeah. So yeah, it's a lot of pressure. And so I think that it's our responsibility to teach ourselves about this topic, and I think that's the only way, the only resolution to this problem, because therapists or mental health services have not been very popular here in Vietnam. And if they are popular, then I don't know of any certified and reliable agencies that can give out advice. And so I think that it's on our hands that we should learn and educate ourselves.
Well, funny thing I've learned this week is that when you want something, despite that, your family, when you are in a situation where you cannot change someone, you cannot, do anything, just set the example, because it starts from you. Whether if you decided that you want to talk about that, then you go for it. Maybe they're gonna be very reluctant, or maybe they're just gonna tell you to shut up and go to your bed. But if you are consistent enough, you just talk about it all the time, then sometimes it's just, you're just gonna break that, show that your parents, maybe because they're fierce too. Parents, sometimes we think of them as being very imposing on everything, and it's not like that. But at the end, they are also kids when they were like 10 years ago, 12 years ago, 15 years ago. And so as parents, they are still learning on how to be better parents. And as kids, as children, we're also learning how to be better, daughter and son. And so I think that if your parents cannot do it, if your parents not the one who's gonna start the conversation, you should be like, you should try. And I know it's gonna be very scary, because I don't think that when it comes to something that is feelings related, I kind of hold my guard up, because I'm afraid that when I talked about feelings, I'm gonna be hurt. But it's, when it comes to families, that's hardly the case, because sometimes you're gonna be shut down, but if you do it consistent and you kind of let it become a normal conversation, then everything, I believe, is gonna work out. And on the points when you said about how the education is always changing and things like that, I think that that's true. I don't know if it's like our minds just instinct, or like I thought about it too, like how everything is changing so fast. It's fleeting. It's basically so fast. And now that the later generations just scraping by just how to move on to the next thing, that they kind of not really know how to, they don't really stop and think about it anymore, because everything's so fast. There's no time for that. So make time for that if you can, because it's really important.
One more thing that I want to add to that is that we have to take into consideration the generational gap between like ourselves and our parents, because back in the day, mental health was not their priority at all, because they had to worry about survival. They couldn't even survive, let alone care about mental health and how well they are functioning. And so I think we should really take that into consideration, because we are so privileged that we now even have the time, the energy, and the means to even talk about mental health, and to even raise awareness about it like we're doing today. And so that in itself is a privilege. And that doesn't say that, we should suppress our feeling because, we're afraid that our parents couldn't, accept that belief. I think that we need to we need to be prepared for the future, because we don't know what the future holds. Maybe the pressure is going to be even more extremes now that we have automation, we have robots that are competing against ourselves. And so we need to prepare ourselves mentally. And I think that the best way to do that is to educate ourselves, but also to educate people around you, because we need to go up as a whole society and not just individuals. And I think that the fact that our parents are not aware of these issues means that we need to protest, and we need to do it even more constantly, so that they can be aware of it and they can learn about this, because this is also for their own like benefits, because of course like our parents suffer from mental health. And I personally think that they are even worse than us when it comes to dealing with anxiety, because we have the means, we have the resources to learn from it, but they didn't have it. And even if they can access to the resources nowadays, they don't even know how to comprehend, they don't even know how to understand this, because in Vietnam we don't have many articles talking about mental health, anxiety, and they are all in English. And so our parents, they cannot even comprehend English. And so we have to take into consideration all of those factors and be a little more sympathetic when approaching and talking about this topic with our parents, and even our grandparents. And so I think that's one way, because I think that we shouldn't be hold grudges against them for not understanding us, because they have their own weaknesses, insecurities. They have their own reasons for not being able to understand us, and we have to be sympathetic as well. And so the end.
I think, well, I mean, I couldn't agree more. Um, that's totally, I mean, hands down, one of the best, viewpoints so far. I think,
Thank you.
I think, yes. I mean, just when it comes to things like this, just have compassion. Have compassion. Really, really, stay patient for things like this. Don't expect something, don't expect that your parents can change overnight. Don't expect that you could just say something, act up, or like do something, and then your parents suddenly change. No. I mean, the older you get, the more kind of, I mean, the more you stick to your principles, and the more stubborn you are. So in times like this, just be patient and just think things through. Don't make any, don't do anything on impulse. Because if anything, don't do anything that cannot be, undone.
To close this episode, I think that we have one more important message to share, which is don't ever commit suicide. And like Sarah said, it's the easy way out if you want to view it that way. But also, we are born to this earth not to commit suicide. We are supposed to live an impact. We have to supposed to lead a beautiful, happy, healthy life. And I think that even though pressures happen, obviously, it's our reactions that matter. So I once read a quote somewhere that said like life is 1% the things that happen to you, and 90% how you react to those things. And so I think that it's what our reactions that matter. And so I think that don't commit suicide, because that's devastating to ourselves and also to the people around us. And I think that we deserve to be happy. And so make it, and don't just choose to end your life that abruptly. I think that that's not worth it. I think that life is beautiful, and you will meet more people that will understand you. Like even if your parents don't understand you, there will be people who understand you. So don't commit suicide. That's the primary message of this video.
Yeah. Maybe not, put in the best or in the most beautiful, in the most beautifully coded or phrase, but I guess it sums up what we really want to tell you, because there's more to life than, those pressure. There's just something that you just gonna flip you by, that's just gonna disappear. So I believe that's a wrap on this video. We hope you learn a thing or two. Feel free to have an open discussion, maybe in the comments below, and we'll see you next time. So stay tuned,
Stay safe
and
stay awesome.
stay awesome. Bye.
Bye.
Trời ơi, mình đang edit khùng luôn.